The edge of my spoon scraped against the aluminum tray, collecting the last traces of what they called oatmeal. Through the small window of my cell, I could see the Ontario winter pressing against the glass, snow falling like static on a dead television screen. I counted the days by scratching marks into the concrete beside my bunk. 734 marks. 2 years and 4 days since my daughter-in-law put me here. I want to know where you're listening from today. Are you in a warm house with family nearby? Hold on to that. Because I learned the hard way that the people closest to you can become strangers in a heartbeat when money enters the equation. My name is Warren Blackwood. I'm 63 years old, though these past 2 years have aged me a decade. Before this nightmare began, I was the founder and CEO of Blackwood Industrial Solutions, a manufacturing company I built from nothing over 35 years. We specialized in precision machinery parts for the automotive industry. At its peak, the company was worth $47 million. I had 2 children, my son Nathan, 40 years old, and my daughter Claire, 36. My wife Margaret died of ovarian cancer 9 years ago. Losing her nearly destroyed me, but I had the company and my children to keep me going. Nathan always wanted to follow in my footsteps. He joined the company right out of university, worked his way up through operations, sales, then management. He was good at it too, sharp with numbers, ambitious, maybe too ambitious. When he turned 35, I made him vice president of operations. That was 5 years ago. He seemed grateful then. He seemed like my son. Everything changed when he met Victoria Chen 3 years ago. She was 28, working as a corporate event planner. Beautiful, charming, always knew exactly what to say. They married after 8 months of dating. I had reservations, told Nathan they were rushing, but he was in love, or what he thought was love. Looking back now, I can see Victoria was never interested in Nathan. She was interested in what Nathan could give her access to. Me, my company, my money. The first year of their marriage seemed fine on the surface. Victoria was polite, attentive at family dinners, always complimenting my business decisions. But I noticed small things. The way she'd steer conversations toward company finances. How she'd ask pointed questions about my estate planning. Nathan started changing too. He'd mention how tired I looked, how maybe it was time to think about stepping back, letting him take on more responsibility. I was 61 then, in perfect health, sharp as ever. I wasn't ready to step back from the company I'd spent my life building. Then came the pregnancy announcement. Nathan and Victoria showed up at my house one Sunday afternoon in October, 2 years and 2 months ago. They were beaming, holding hands. Victoria's eyes were actually wet with tears. She was 10 weeks pregnant, they said. I was going to be a grandfather. I felt joy I hadn't experienced since Margaret died. Nathan was my boy again, hugging me tight, talking about how excited he was to be a father, how he wanted his child to know me the way he'd known my father. That night, Victoria pulled me aside in the kitchen while Nathan was in the bathroom. She put her hand on my arm, looked up at me with those doe eyes. "Warren, I need to ask you something," she said softly. "With the baby coming, Nathan and I have been talking about the future. We were wondering if you'd considered making Nathan CEO. You've worked so hard for so long. Don't you think you deserve to enjoy your retirement? Spend time with your grandchild?" I kept my tone gentle but firm. "Victoria, I appreciate your concern, but I'm not ready to retire. I'll absolutely make time for my grandchild, but the company still needs me. When I'm ready to step down, Nathan will be first in line. But that time isn't now." Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Of course. I understand. Just something to think about." 3 weeks later, everything fell apart. It was a Wednesday evening, November 3rd. Nathan called me, his voice frantic, breaking. "Dad, you need to get to Toronto General right now. Victoria's in the emergency room. She's bleeding. Something's wrong with the baby." I drove 90 minutes through freezing rain, my heart pounding the entire way. When I arrived, Nathan was in the waiting room, his face buried in his hands. I'd never seen him like that, not even at his mother's funeral. I sat beside him, put my arm around his shoulders. "What happened?" I asked. "She started bleeding this afternoon. Heavy bleeding. The doctors are with her now. They said it might be a miscarriage. Dad, I can't lose this baby. I can't." We waited for 3 hours. Finally, A doctor came out, a woman in her 40s with tired eyes. Dr. Rajesh, her badge said. She sat down across from us, her expression professionally sympathetic. "I'm very sorry," she said quietly. "We weren't able to save the pregnancy. Your wife suffered a complete miscarriage at approximately 12 weeks. Nathan made a sound I'd never heard from him before, something between a sob and a wail. He doubled over like he'd been punched in the stomach. I held him while he cried, feeling my own throat tighten. My grandchild was gone. What caused it? I managed to ask. Was it something preventable? Dr. Rajesh hesitated. These things happen, unfortunately. First trimester miscarriages are quite common. However, Mrs. Blackwood mentioned she experienced significant stress recently. Emotional stress can sometimes be a contributing factor, though it's rarely the sole cause. Stress? I said. What kind of stress? Before the doctor could answer, Victoria was wheeled out from the emergency area. She looked pale, fragile, IVs in both arms. When she saw Nathan, she reached for him weakly. He rushed to her side, taking her hand. "Nathan," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I'm so sorry. I lost our baby. I lost our baby because of the stress, because of the pressure." "What pressure, sweetheart?" "It's not your fault." She turned her head toward me, and I saw something flicker in her eyes, something calculated. Then tears spilled down her cheeks. "Your father, Nathan, your father has been putting so much pressure on us, on me. Ever since we told him about the baby, he's been calling me, texting me, demanding that we sign over shares of the company to him, threatening to cut you out of the inheritance if we don't comply. I told him I was pregnant, that I couldn't handle the stress, but he wouldn't stop. He said if we wanted to stay in the family, we had to do what he said. And now our baby is dead because of him." The world stopped moving. I stood there, frozen, trying to process what she'd just said. Nathan's face went from grief to confusion to something darker. He looked at me. "Dad, is this true? Have you been pressuring Victoria?" "What? No, Nathan, I would never." "He's lying," Victoria cried out, her voice stronger now. "He's been doing this for weeks. I have the text messages, the voicemails. He threatened us, Nathan. He said if we didn't sign over 30% of our potential inheritance to him immediately, he'd make sure you lost your position at the company. He said we'd never see a penny. I was so stressed, I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat. And now our baby is dead because of it." "That's insane," I said, my voice rising. "Nathan, you know me. You know I would never do something like that. This is completely fabricated. Then why do I have evidence?" Victoria pulled out her phone with a shaking hand, scrolled through it, then showed the screen to Nathan. I couldn't see what it displayed, but Nathan's face went white, then red. Then he looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Pure hatred. "You son of a bitch," he said quietly. "You killed my child." "Nathan, those messages aren't from me. Whatever she's showing you is fake." "Get out," he said. "Get out of this hospital before I kill you myself." A nurse stepped forward, concerned. "Gentlemen, please keep your voices down. This man murdered my baby," Nathan shouted. "He harassed my wife until she miscarried. Someone call security." "Nathan, please, just listen to me for 1 minute." He lunged at me. 2 orderlies grabbed him, held him back as he thrashed, screaming obscenities, calling me a murderer, saying I was dead to him. Hospital security arrived, escorted me out of the emergency room, while Nathan's screams echoed down the hallway. Victoria watched me go, and just before the elevator doors closed, I saw her face. She wasn't crying anymore. She was smiling. I drove home in shock, my hands trembling on the steering wheel. This couldn't be happening. This wasn't real. Nathan knew me. He knew I would never threaten him, never harass anyone, let alone a pregnant woman. Once he calmed down, he'd realize Victoria was lying. He had to. He didn't. 3 days later, 2 police officers showed up at my door. I was being charged with criminal harassment, uttering threats, and intimidation, causing psychological harm. Victoria had filed a formal complaint, provided dozens of text messages and voicemails, allegedly from me, threatening her and Nathan. She'd given a statement to police that I'd been stalking her, showing up at their home unannounced, sending threatening letters. She claimed she'd gone to a therapist who documented her stress and anxiety, and she had Dr. Rajesh's statement that stress may have contributed to the miscarriage. The prosecutors built a case that I'd harassed my daughter-in-law to the point of causing her to lose her pregnancy. They painted me as a controlling, abusive father trying to manipulate my son's inheritance, willing to terrorize a pregnant woman to get my way. They presented the text messages, the voicemails, witness statements from Victoria's friends saying she'd confided in them about my harassment, even a statement from Nathan himself, testifying under oath that he believed I was responsible for his child's death. My lawyer was a family attorney named Raymond Burke, 68 years old, semi-retired, someone I'd used for estate planning. He was competent with contracts and wills, but completely out of his depth with criminal defense. I should have hired someone else, someone younger, more aggressive, but I was in shock. I couldn't think straight. Raymond told me not to worry, that the truth would come out, that no jury would convict me without real evidence. He was wrong. The trial lasted 6 days. The prosecution presented their case methodically. The messages, the voicemails, the testimony. Raymond barely cross-examined Victoria. He didn't question the authenticity of the digital evidence. He didn't subpoena Victoria's phone records or medical records. He didn't hire a forensic tech expert to examine whether the messages had been fabricated. He just kept saying, "My client is a good man. This is a misunderstanding." But the jury saw a wealthy, powerful businessman and a young woman who'd lost her baby. They saw text messages with threats. They heard voicemails with my voice saying terrible things. I knew those messages were fake, either deep-faked or taken from other contexts and spliced together, but no one proved it. No one even tried. On the 6th day, the jury deliberated for 3 hours. They found me guilty on all charges. The judge, an older woman named Justice Patricia Hammond, looked at me with pure disgust as she read the sentence. "Mr. Blackwood," she said, "you used your position of power to terrorize a vulnerable young woman. Your actions resulted in the loss of an innocent life. While I cannot hold you directly responsible for the miscarriage, your behavior was cruel, calculated, and unforgivable. I sentence you to 2 years in federal prison, followed by 3 years of probation. You are also ordered to pay restitution to Mrs. Victoria Blackwood in the amount of $50,000 for psychological damages." I stood there, numb, as they placed handcuffs on my wrists. I looked out into the courtroom gallery. Nathan sat in the front row, his arm around Victoria. She was crying into his shoulder. He stared at me with cold, empty eyes, like I was a stranger, like I was a monster. Claire wasn't there. My daughter had tried to support me during the trial, told me she didn't believe I'd done what they accused me of, but Nathan had forbidden her from testifying on my behalf. He'd told her if she supported me, he'd cut her out of his life. Claire had a daughter of her own, my granddaughter Emma, who was 7 years old. She couldn't risk losing her brother. I understood. I didn't blame her. They took me to the Collins Bay Institution, a medium-security federal prison about 2 hours east of Toronto. I was 61 years old, a first-time offender, surrounded by men half my age who'd done things I couldn't imagine. I kept my head down, stayed quiet, tried to survive. Every month, like clockwork, I received a notification that Nathan and Victoria had come to the prison for visitation. Every month, I refused to see them. What was there to say? Nathan had chosen to believe Victoria over me. He'd testified against me in court. He'd watched them take me away in handcuffs and hadn't said a word. I had nothing to say to him, and I certainly had nothing to say to her, but I had plenty of time to think. 734 days to think about what had happened, about the text messages and voicemails, about Victoria's convenient miscarriage, about how quickly she'd turned Nathan against me, about how eager Nathan had been to believe I was capable of such cruelty. And I thought about the company, Blackwood Industrial Solutions, my life's work. I'd left it in Nathan's hands when I was arrested, assumed the board would appoint an interim CEO while I was away. I had no idea what was happening with it. I wasn't allowed internet access, limited phone privileges, no contact with anyone from the business. For 2 years, I was completely cut off. But I wasn't alone. Claire wrote me letters every week. She couldn't visit often. Nathan had made it clear she'd be disowned if she supported me publicly, but she wrote. She told me about Emma's soccer games, about her job as a pediatric nurse, about her quiet life in Mississauga. And in one letter, dated 18 months into my sentence, she wrote something that changed everything. "Dad, I know you don't want to hear about Nathan, but I think you need to know this. I ran into an old colleague of yours last week, Dennis Murphy, from the accounting department. He said there are rumors at the company that things aren't right. Nathan's made some questionable decisions, brought in outside consultants, restructured departments. Dennis said morale is terrible. Several senior people have quit. He also mentioned something strange. Victoria is at the office constantly now, sitting in on executive meetings, even though she doesn't work there. Nathan refers to her as co-CEO in emails. Dennis said he's worried about where the company is heading. I thought you should know. I read that letter a dozen times. Victoria, co-CEO, at my company, the company I'd built from nothing, that bore my name, now being run by the woman who'd destroyed my life. And Nathan was letting it happen. Or more likely, she was making it happen, and he was too blinded by grief and manipulation to see it. I started making phone calls. Prison phone privileges are limited, but I had a few trusted contacts on the outside. An old business partner named George Hawthorne who'd retired 3 years earlier. My estate lawyer, though not Raymond Burke, I'd fired him immediately after the trial. A private investigator named Samantha Rodriguez who'd worked with the company before on due diligence for acquisitions. I couldn't tell them much on recorded prison lines, but I asked George to quietly look into the company's financial status. I asked my lawyer to review my corporate governance documents, specifically the clauses about succession and CEO authority. And I asked Samantha to look into Victoria Chen's background before she met Nathan. Over the next 6 months, pieces started coming together. George discovered that Blackwood Industrial Solutions was hemorrhaging money. Nathan had taken on significant debt, made several bad acquisitions, overpaid for equipment that wasn't necessary. The company's value had dropped from $47 million to approximately $30 million. Several major clients had left. The board was concerned, but Nathan, as acting CEO with my power of attorney, had restructured the board itself, replacing 3 independent directors with people loyal to him, one of whom was Victoria's brother, Marcus Chen. My lawyer found something even more interesting. According to the corporate documents I'd signed years ago, in the event of my incapacitation or legal inability to serve as CEO, Nathan would assume temporary leadership. But that authority was supposed to be reviewed annually by the full board of directors, and there was a clause that stated if the founder returned to capacity, he could resume his position with a simple majority vote. I wasn't incapacitated. I was imprisoned, and my sentence was almost up, but the most damning information came from Samantha. Victoria Chen wasn't who she claimed to be. Her real name was Victoria Martins. She'd changed it legally 7 years ago after being sued in British Columbia for fraud. She'd been part of a real estate scam, convincing elderly investors to put money into fake property developments, then disappearing with their funds. She'd served 18 months of probation, changed her name, and moved to Ontario. Before she met Nathan, she'd dated 2 other men, both wealthy, both significantly older than her. One had died in a suspicious accident, fell downstairs in his home, and Victoria had been briefly investigated but never charged. The other had lost his business after Victoria convinced him to take on massive debt for expansion, then left him when the company collapsed. Victoria was a predator, a professional one. She found wealthy men, married them, manipulated them, and took everything. Nathan was just her latest target, and I'd been the obstacle standing in her way. The day I was released was February 18th, 2 years and 4 days after I'd been arrested. It was a Friday, bitterly cold. The kind of Ontario winter morning that cuts through your coat and settles in your bones. I walked out of the Collins Bay Institution wearing the same clothes I'd worn at sentencing, a gray suit that now hung loose on my frame. I'd lost 23 pounds in prison. My hair had gone completely white. My face was lined and weathered. I looked 73, not 63. Claire was waiting in the parking lot, standing beside her Honda CR-V, bundled in a purple parka. When she saw me, she burst into tears and ran forward, throwing her arms around me. I held my daughter and let myself feel something other than rage for the first time in 2 years. "Welcome home, Dad," she whispered. "Thank you for not giving up on me, sweetheart." We drove to her house in Mississauga. She'd prepared a guest room, made my favorite meal, pot roast with roasted vegetables, and gave me space to breathe. Emma, now 9 years old, was shy around me at first. She'd been 7 when I went to prison. Barely remembered me, but she warmed up over dinner, told me about her school and her friends, and her new hamster named Biscuit. For a few hours, I felt almost human again. That evening, after Emma went to bed, Claire and I sat in the living room. She handed me a folder. "This is everything I could gather about what's been happening with the company," she said. "It's not good, Dad." I opened the folder. Financial statements, emails, news articles, internal memos. Nathan had run Blackwood Industrial Solutions into the ground. Debt had ballooned to $18 million. Revenue was down 40%. 3 major clients had terminated contracts, citing quality control issues and missed deadlines. Employee turnover was at 60%, and Victoria was everywhere in meetings, on emails, making decisions. Nathan called her his strategic advisor, but she was clearly running the show. "There's something else," Claire said quietly. "I didn't want to tell you in a letter, but now that you're out, you need to know. Nathan and Victoria bought a house 6 months ago, a mansion in Oakville, $4.2 million. Dad, there's no way Nathan's salary could cover that mortgage, even with his bonuses. I think they've been siphoning money from the company." I looked at my daughter, this brave, loyal woman who'd risked her relationship with her brother to help me. "Claire, I need you to do something for me, and I need you to do it without asking questions. Can you do that?" She nodded. "I need you to schedule an emergency board meeting for Blackwood Industrial Solutions. You're not on the board, but as my daughter and a major shareholder through your mother's estate, you have the right to request one. Tell them I'm out of prison, I'm resuming my duties as founder and CEO, and I need to address the board immediately regarding the company's financial situation. Can you do that?" "Yes." "When?" "Monday morning, 9 a.m. Her eyes widened. "That's 3 days from now." "Dad, are you sure? Don't you need time to rest, to prepare?" "I've had 2 years to prepare," I said. "Now I need to act." The emergency board meeting was scheduled for Monday, February 21st, at the company's headquarters in Mississauga. It was the same building I'd worked in for 35 years, a modest 3-story structure with our company logo, a stylized anvil on the front. Walking through those doors again felt surreal, like stepping into a past life. The receptionist, a young woman I didn't recognize, looked confused when I walked in. "I'm sorry, sir. Can I help you?" "I'm Warren Blackwood. I'm here for the board meeting." Her face went pale. Oh my God. "Mr. Blackwood, I didn't nobody told me you were." "It's all right. Conference room B, correct?" "Yes, sir. But Mr. Nathan Blackwood is in a meeting right now with—" "I know exactly who he's with." I walked past her desk, down the familiar hallway lined with photos of company milestones, product launches, team celebrations. Most of the photos included me. Some had been taken down, I noticed, replaced with generic corporate art. Conference room B was at the end of the hall. Through the glass door, I could see them. Nathan, sitting at the head of the table in my chair. Victoria beside him, dressed in an expensive navy suit, looking every bit the executive. And 5 board members, most of whom I'd appointed myself. Patricia Werner, Marcus Chen, Victoria's brother, David Saunders, Jennifer Kowalski, and George Hawthorne, my old partner, who'd managed to stay on the board despite Nathan's restructuring. I opened the door. Everyone turned. The room went silent. Nathan stood up slowly, his face going through several emotions at once: shock, anger, fear. Victoria's expression was harder to read, but I saw her hand tighten on the pen she'd been holding. "What the hell are you doing here?" Nathan said. "Good morning, everyone," I said calmly, stepping into the room. "I apologize for the disruption, but as you all know, I'm the founder and majority shareholder of this company. My sentence has been completed. I'm no longer incarcerated, and according to our corporate governance documents, I have the right to resume my position as CEO. That's why I called this emergency meeting." "You can't just walk in here," and Nathan started. "Actually, I can," I said. "Patricia, David, Jennifer, George, thank you for coming on such short notice. I know this is unusual, but I need to address some serious concerns about the company's direction over the past 2 years. George, would you mind distributing the financial summary I sent you?" George, bless him, had prepared copies. He passed them around the table. Nathan tried to grab one, but I held up my hand. "Nathan, you'll get a copy, but right now I need you to listen. Everyone, please review page 3. You'll see our current debt load is $18 million, up from $4 million 2 years ago. Revenue is down 40%. We've lost 3 major clients. Our credit rating has been downgraded twice. At our current trajectory, Blackwood Industrial Solutions will be insolvent within 18 months. Patricia, a retired CFO who'd been on the board for 10 years, looked horrified. Warren, I had no idea the situation was this severe. Nathan assured us that the debt was strategic, part of an expansion plan. What expansion plan? I asked. We acquired 2 small fabrication shops in Windsor and Hamilton, both of which were overvalued and have produced 0 return. We purchased equipment we didn't need, and somehow, despite declining revenue, executive compensation has increased 40%. Nathan slammed his hand on the table. You have no right to come in here and attack my leadership. I've been running this company while you were in prison for harassing my wife and causing her to lose our baby. Everything I've done has been to keep this company afloat after you destroyed our family. The room was silent. I looked at my son, this man I'd raised, who I'd taught to fish and ride a bike and balance a budget. This stranger who'd sent me to prison. Nathan, I said quietly, I never harassed Victoria. I never threatened anyone. I was innocent, and you knew it. But you chose to believe her over me. You testified against me in court, and now I'm going to show you what you were really supporting. I nodded to George, who pressed a button on the laptop, connected to the projector. The screen lit up with a series of documents. This is Victoria Chen's real background, I said. Her name wasn't always Chen, it was Martin's. She changed it after serving probation for fraud in British Columbia. She's been involved in at least 3 financial schemes targeting wealthy men. One of her previous partners died under suspicious circumstances. Another lost his business. And now she's doing it to our family. Victoria stood up, her face flushing. This is slander! Warren, I could sue you for. For what? Telling the truth? These are public records, Victoria. Court documents, police reports. It's all there. I clicked to the next slide. Bank statements. This is where things get interesting, I continued. Over the past 18 months, approximately $2.3 million has been transferred from Blackwood Industrial Solutions to a numbered company registered in Victoria and Nathan's names. That money was listed as consulting fees, but no consulting work was ever documented. It was embezzlement. You've been stealing from the company to fund your lifestyle. The mansion in Oakville, the cars, the vacations. Nathan's face had gone from red to white. Dad, I can explain. No, you can't. Because there is no explanation that justifies this. You've destroyed the company I spent my life building. You've alienated our employees, driven away our clients, and stolen millions of dollars. And you did it all while I sat in a prison cell for a crime I didn't commit. Jennifer Kowalski, the youngest board member, spoke up hesitantly. Warren, what are you proposing? I'm proposing we take a vote right now. I'm formally requesting to resume my position as CEO, effective immediately. Nathan will be terminated as acting CEO and removed from all executive positions. Victoria Chen will be banned from the premises and investigated for her role in the embezzlement. And I will spend the next year cleaning up this mess and trying to save what's left of Blackwood Industrial Solutions. Marcus Chen, Victoria's brother, stood up. I vote no. This is a witch hunt. Warren is a convicted criminal with an axe to grind. You don't have a vote, Marcus, I said. You're going to resign from this board today, along with the other 2 directors Nathan appointed without proper authorization. Patricia, David, Jennifer, George, you're the legitimate board. The decision is yours. One by one they voted. Patricia, yes. David, yes. Jennifer, yes. George, yes. 4-0. Motion passes, I said. Nathan, you're done. Security will escort you and Victoria from the building. You have 1 hour to collect your personal belongings. Nathan lunged across the table toward me, but George and David grabbed him. He was screaming, calling me a monster, saying I'd ruined his life, that I'd killed his child, and now I was taking everything from him. Victoria was crying, pleading, saying this was all a misunderstanding. She'd never stolen anything. She loved Nathan and only wanted what was best for the family. Security arrived. 2 officers I'd hired myself years ago, both of whom remembered me. They escorted Nathan and Victoria out of the conference room, down the hallway, past the receptionist, who watched with wide eyes, and out the front door. I walked to the window and watched them get into Nathan's Mercedes paid for with stolen company money and drive away. My hands were shaking. I felt no satisfaction, no triumph, just emptiness. Claire found me an hour later, standing in my old office. She hugged me tightly. "Is it over?" she asked. "Not yet," I said, "but we're getting there." Over the next 3 months, with the help of forensic accountants and lawyers, we uncovered the full extent of Nathan and Victoria's theft. They'd embezzled $3.7 million total. Victoria had orchestrated the whole thing, setting up shell companies, forging documents, manipulating Nathan into believing it was all legal and strategic. She'd played him perfectly, just like she'd played her previous victims. The Crown prosecutor, a woman named Lisa Chen, no relation to Victoria, reviewed all the evidence I'd gathered. She was the one who'd put me in prison 2 years earlier, and to her credit, when she saw what had really happened, she was horrified. She immediately opened an investigation into Victoria for fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. She also launched a review of my original case, looking into the possibility that the evidence had been fabricated. It took 4 months, but eventually they proved it. The text messages and voicemails were deepfakes, created using AI voice synthesis and spoofed phone numbers. Victoria had hired a tech expert in the States to create them. The miscarriage was real. Victoria had been pregnant, but it wasn't caused by stress. Medical records, obtained through court order, showed Victoria had a pre-existing uterine condition that made miscarriage likely. She'd known about it before she got pregnant. She'd used the tragedy as a weapon. On July 9th, 2 years and 7 months after I was sent to prison, my conviction was overturned. Justice Patricia Hammond, the same judge who'd sentenced me, issued a formal apology. The Crown issued a statement admitting wrongful conviction. I was officially exonerated. 2 weeks later, Victoria Chen was arrested and charged with fraud, embezzlement, perjury, and conspiracy to commit fraud. She was denied bail. Her trial is scheduled for next spring. She'll likely spend the next 5 to 8 years in prison. Nathan was arrested too, charged as an accomplice to embezzlement. But here's where the story gets complicated. During the investigation, it became clear that Nathan hadn't known the full extent of what Victoria was doing. He'd signed documents she put in front of him, trusted her when she said the transfers were legitimate business expenses. He'd been manipulated, gaslit, controlled. The prosecutors offered him a deal: testify against Victoria, repay what he could, serve 2 years probation, and accept permanent removal from any executive position at Blackwood Industrial Solutions. He took the deal, and then he asked to see me. We met at a coffee shop in Toronto, a neutral location. Nathan looked terrible. He'd lost weight. His eyes were hollow. His hands shook as he held his coffee cup. When I sat down across from him, he couldn't meet my eyes. "Dad," he said quietly, "I don't know where to start." "Start with the truth," I said. He took a shaky breath. "I was wrong. About everything. I believed her over you, and I'll never forgive myself for that. I testified against you in court. I watched them take you to prison, and the whole time, I thought I was doing the right thing because I loved her, and I trusted her, and I thought you'd actually done those things. But you hadn't, and she destroyed our family for money." "She destroyed our family," I said. "But you let her. You chose her over me, Nathan, not because she tricked you into it, because somewhere deep down, you wanted to believe the worst about me. Maybe you resented me for building something you couldn't. Maybe you felt like you were always in my shadow. I don't know. But you made a choice." He nodded, tears streaming down his face. I know I did, and I'll spend the rest of my life regretting it. Dad, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even know if I deserve to ask. But I need you to know that I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I sat there, looking at my son, this broken man who'd once been my boy. I thought about forgiveness, about whether it was something I could give or even wanted to. I thought about Margaret, about what she would have done. She was always better at mercy than I was. "Nathan," I said, "I can't forgive you right now. Maybe someday. But right now, the wound is too fresh. What I can tell you is this: you're still my son. That hasn't changed. But our relationship has. You're going to have to earn back my trust, if that's even possible. And it starts with you taking responsibility for your own choices. Victoria manipulated you, yes, but you were 40 years old. You knew right from wrong. You chose wrong. I know. You're going to go through your probation. You're going to repay every penny you can. You're going to get therapy, real therapy, to figure out why you were so susceptible to her manipulation. And you're going to stay away from me and the company until I decide I'm ready to have you in my life again. If I ever am. He wiped his eyes. Okay. Whatever you need, Dad. I stood up to leave, then paused. Nathan, I want you to understand something. I lost 2 years of my life. I lost my reputation, my freedom, my health. But you lost more. You lost your integrity. You lost your family. You lost yourself. What Victoria did to you was terrible, but what you did to yourself was worse. Remember that. I left him sitting there, staring into his coffee. Today, I'm 64 years old. It's been 8 months since I was exonerated. Blackwood Industrial Solutions is slowly recovering. We've cut the debt by 40%, brought back 2 of our lost clients, and hired a new management team. Claire joined the company as CFO. She left her nursing job to help me rebuild. Emma comes to the office sometimes after school, does her homework in my office, tells me about her day. I'm teaching her about manufacturing, about business, about building something that lasts. I see Nathan occasionally. Brief, awkward encounters at family events that Claire organizes because she wants her daughter to know her uncle. He's working as a floor manager at a small manufacturing plant, trying to rebuild his life from the ground up. We don't talk much. The wound is still too deep. Victoria's trial starts in 3 months. I'll be there, in the courtroom, watching as justice is finally served. I don't hate her anymore. Hate is exhausting, and I'm too old for it. But I'll make sure she faces the consequences of her actions. If you're listening to my story today, wherever you are, I want you to learn from my mistakes. First, trust your instincts. I knew something was wrong with Victoria from the beginning, but I dismissed it because Nathan seemed happy. If something feels wrong, investigate it. Don't ignore red flags. Second, protect yourself legally. I should have had better corporate governance structures in place, better safeguards against fraud, better succession planning. I was so focused on building the business that I didn't protect it properly. Third, and most important, your relationships with your children are not guaranteed. You have to earn their trust and loyalty every day, and even then, they can make choices that hurt you. But you also have to recognize when they've been manipulated, when they're victims too. It's complicated. Family is always complicated. I spent 2 years in prison for a crime I didn't commit, betrayed by my own son, robbed by a woman who saw my family as nothing but a paycheck. I lost time I'll never get back. But I also learned who I could truly count on. Claire, George, the employees who stayed loyal when they had every reason to leave. Those relationships are what saved me. The marks I carved into that prison cell wall are still there, I suppose. 734 lines, counting down the days until I could reclaim my life. I don't need to count anymore. I'm free. Not entirely whole, maybe never whole again, but free, and that's enough.